Hi, Tracy Hugelmeyer here from VintagepreneurUniversity.com, where I help vintage sellers start, grow, and scale their business on Etsy. I also own my own vintage business on Etsy, Rustic Eye, that I've had since 2013, and I absolutely love what I do. I love helping you. And today we're going to take a look at the new trend guide that Etsy put out, the new holiday trend guide. And I'm going to point out some things that are super cool because they're specific for vintage shops, which I was super happy to see. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so I'm here in my dashboard, and the first thing that I noticed that I was like, wow, it says discover vintage holiday trends to try in your shop. And before it was telling me about the trend report, but I don't think it was specifically mentioning vintage. So when I first saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, did they make us our own trend report? Well, not quite. However, there are some really great pointers specifically for vintage shops. So let's go ahead and open that up. And here we are in the 2019 holiday trends guide that Etsy put out. And I think that sometimes as vintage sellers, we don't necessarily think that trends apply to us, but they actually do apply to vintage sellers as well. It can be the difference between stocking your shop with things that are cool and interesting, and someone might find them who wants to buy them. There, will be somebody who's interested in buying them, most likely, eventually. And having lots of people who are interested in purchasing your items because they're trending and they're things that people are actively searching for and actively looking for. So you want to use trending guides as a way to see source, to figure out what you should source for your items. No matter what your niche is, you can still use trends to help shape the items that you stock in your shop. So if you scroll down a little bit, right here, this little note, it says, a note to vintage sellers. Yay, they do love us. As consumer interest in nostalgia-inducing pieces and sustainable products grows, we're seeing shoppers drawn to vintage finds across categories. Well, that's exciting that even Etsy's seeing that, right? I mean, we know that. We're selling the stuff, but it's nice to see that Etsy is recognizing it as well. And it says, throughout this report, we've spotlighted specific opportunities for you to meet this demand. And as you scroll down, you'll see these little orange or purple bubbles. Let me find the first one. There it is. You see that vintage opportunity. I'll just read you what it says. We're seeing rising traffic for vintage decor items. So, of course, like I said, we know this, but it's nice to see that Etsy is recognizing that people are searching for vintage holiday decor items. So what does that mean? We want to use vintage holiday decor items in our keywords, in our titles, and in our tags. And even throughout our listing descriptions and maybe a category in our shop, a section in our shop, things like that. You want to key into these keywords to use them strategically throughout your shop. Now, if you do not have any vintage holiday decor items, then of course this particular opportunity won't apply to you. But if you do, if there is anything that you sell that could be considered vintage holiday decor items, then you want to do what you can do to use, to incorporate that into your strategy. And even if you don't think that it's necessarily holiday decor, something that you have, think outside the box, because somebody might use maybe a red colored vintage scarf that you have and display it cutely in their holiday decor on their table or on their mantle or, on somewhere in their home. So there could be things that you have or could have in your shop that fit this category, even though you might not necessarily think that right off the bat. So try and think outside the box when it comes to tapping into these trends. I do recommend you read this entire guide. However, I'm not going to be going through the entire guide in this video. Instead, I'm going to focus on the things that are specific things that you can use for your vintage business, okay? But every single category you'll see, it starts with home and living trends, could potentially apply to your vintage items and your vintage niche and your vintage shop. So for example, here it's saying that things that are really trending right now for materials are wood, straw reeds, origami paper. So whereas a crafter might look at those in a different way, as a vintage seller, we might key into, okay, we have, a display item that is, or, a decor item, I should say, that is made out of straw reeds. Well, then we want to make sure we're using that keyword, straw reeds, so that we tap into that trend, okay? Here we have key items, table linens. So if right now, if you are using if you have something that you're selling, I'll go back to the scarf example. If you are selling a vintage scarf that could potentially be used as a table linen, well, maybe you want to make sure you use table linen as a keyword. So that's just an example of how you can use this guide to get more traffic to your shop and ultimately more purchases. Holiday wreaths. So if you have a 634% year-over-year increase in searches for holiday wreath, that's valuable information. If you have a holiday wreath, a vintage holiday wreath in your possession, or if it fits into your niche and you see it when you're out sourcing, something that would, it could be even completely outside the box. It might not look like your typical holiday wreath, but if it can be used as a holiday wreath in any stretch of the imagination, you want to make sure you're using that keyword, holiday wreath, right? So back to this first vintage opportunity, there's a lot of information here about MidCentury. Again, it says tap into the enthusiasm for vintage vibes with kitschy details that throw back to the entertaining heydays of the 50s and 60s. Tinsel trees, playfully oversized lights and ornaments, classic recipes, and updated traditionalism. Think stylized menorahs and nativity sets. Encourage shoppers to get everyone dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way. So, this is a kind of a challenge for a lot of vintage shops to look at, okay, how can I play to this trend? How can I, if it's close enough to my niche, if it makes sense for my niche and my shop, right? I mean, you don't want to change your niche. You don't want to put things into your shop that don't make sense. But whenever you can use this information, definitely make sure that you do that. And then these keyword terms, they're great. They're for getting ideas. You may not have thought of using color blocking in your terms, in your keywords before, but maybe you sell vintage sweaters and you have some that use color blocking. Well, make sure you're using that keyword term, because Etsy is telling us that this is a trending term. Color blocking. Candy cane stripes. Do you have anything with candy cane stripes? Vintage cars. This is a great one for the holidays. If you have any type of vintage cars, make it look super holiday cute in that first photo. Put a little, I had some in the past where I just attached a little craft tree to it, and then right there it went from just a regular vintage car to a holiday decor item that people snatched up at the holiday time. So this is such great information. All right, here's another vintage opportunity. Searches for vintage holiday fabric are on the rise. So who of you have vintage holiday fabric either currently available or that would fit in your niche that you can source right now and get in your shop and reach the people that are looking for vintage holiday fabric? Make sure you do that and then use that keyword too, vintage holiday fabric, in your titles and or tags, okay? So that's another vintage opportunity. I just love these. Let's see what the next one is. Scrolling down, here we go. Attract New Year's shoppers with 70s and 80s fashion elements like velvet, florals, and sequins. So what do you have if you're selling vintage clothing? Does it fit in any of these categories? 70s and 80s fashion, velvet, floral, sequins. Use those keywords and source those things if they fit within your niche and will make sense in your shop. So you use the information in that way. All right, so what's next? We have vintage styles appeal to buyers seeking one-of-a-kind finds. As vintage sellers, we probably already know this, but if you're not already using one-of-a-kind somewhere in your listings, then make sure to do that in your keywords. Here's another vintage opportunity. Statement jewelry is also trending, spiking interest in vintage looks. So if you have a jewelry niche, then that's something you should pay attention to, and maybe use statement jewelry in your keywords, and take a look at the other things that are trending to make sure you're taking full advantage of that, like enamel pins. Do you have coin pouches? Do you have keychains? And then also look at how they are saying that they're being used. It says small presents can still pack a punch for a gift exchange, stocking stuffer, or a holiday photo op. So if you have these types of things, these keychains, enamel pins, or other pocket-sized mementos, then maybe you should consider keywords like gift exchange, stocking stuffer, holiday photo op. So you can start to see the different ways that you can use this trend guide to get more traffic to your shop. What's next? Okay, next one is vintage engagement rings and vintage rings are top search terms during this time frame. So take note of that. It looks like we have, this is in the wedding trends section. So it says winter holidays coincide with peak engagement season and mark the beginning for many couples of entertaining as a twosome. So customers will be on the hunt for special surprises, from engagement rings to presents fit for a pair. So keep those things in mind if you have anything that fits in those categories. All right, well, those were all the specific vintage tips and vintage opportunities that Etsy pointed out, but there's a lot of things in this trending guide that will apply to any shop on Etsy. You just have to sometimes think outside of the box on how to incorporate these search terms and these trends in your own shop. So again, I highly recommend that you read through that entire trend guide. There's so much information in there that is really going to help you. And if you're wanting to work on your search engine optimization, I have a challenge specifically for that. It's a free challenge. You can find it if you go to vintagepreneuruniversity.com/free challenge. I will also link to that in the notes of this video for you as well. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel and click the little bell as well so you get notified anytime a new video comes out. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day. Bye!